Have you ever heard of an old game called The Teeter? Yeah, didn't think so. Probably because many say it doesn't even exist. You see, The Teeter was released around the same time as Doom. Today, if you ever find it, it's only available on crappy bootleg CD-ROMs, which more often than not don't even actually contain the game. The actual legitimate copies that were apparently released back in the day feature a blank cover with nothing but a sprite of what has since been named the Ticket Taker. He is a poorly drawn, pixelated, bald Caucasian man with large red lips, wearing a red vest over a white shirt and black pants. He is completely expressionless, though some say that if you smash the disc, his face will be angry the next time you look at the cover. This is only an urban legend, of course. What is peculiar about the Teeter, however, is that there is no developer named on the jewel case, nor any game description on the back, it's just the Ticket Taker on a white background on both sides. This is how one of the most classic gaming creepypastas opens up. I'm talking about, of course, the Teeter. This creepypasta, released 14 years ago, was one of my first exposures to creepypasta as a whole, and I was captivated by it. So today I decided to take a look back to this timeless classic and what made it so special. This being said, I am Nokia, and this is the classic horror of the Teeter. This creepypasta's earliest origins are from around the 10th of October 2010, but sadly we don't know who made it, as the author is completely unknown fittingly enough, and for its time I think it still stands strong because it doesn't overly try to portray itself as the edgiest, realistic, blood-fueled mess like most other gaming creepypastas. In fact, it is older than the most famous gaming creepypasta by almost a year. I read you the beginning, so it's only fair I read you the rest. The game was initially known for its inability to install correctly. The installation process would immediately lock up the computer when the user reached the licensing agreement. Also strange about the licensing agreement was that whenever the name of the development studio was supposed to show up, the text would simply be a blank line. Anyways, most people who have claimed to own one of the original CDs say that they figured out how to install the game by rebooting their computer on the licensing agreement page, with the disc still inside. Following that, they are prompted to press I agree on startup before continuing with the installation. Supposedly, if a player manages to find what they believe to be a working copy, the installer window will freeze and stop responding before they can click their first next. Some also find that their PCs do not lock up and it's only the installer that freezes. It is unknown if these effects come from actual copies or fakes, but it is widely thought that so-called working copies are illegitimate and made to draw the internet's attention, with no proof of the installation effects. Upon proper installation, the game will start up without any introduction other than main menu, that is merely the sprite of a movie theater's exterior on an empty city street. The title fades in prior to the three menu buttons: New Game, Load, Options. Selecting Options immediately crashes the game to the desktop. Load is set not to function at all, even if you do have a saved game. Nothing will happen when you press it. Thus, New Game is the only working menu option. Once it is selected, you will find yourself in a first-person viewpoint, standing in a movie theater lobby. The room is empty with the exception of the ticket taker in front of a dark hallway, which one can only assume leads to the theater themselves. There's nothing to do here but look at the poorly drawn, mostly illegible movie posters or approach the ticket taker. Upon doing so, a very low quality sound clip will play saying "Thank you, please enjoy the movie," along with a speech box that reads the same thing. After walking to the hallway, the screen will fade to black and you'll find yourself back in the empty lobby. The rest of the game consists of you doing the exact thing again and again and again. While this may sound like a tedious experience, a number of peculiar things will occur as you continue to play the game. The number of times you have to enter the hall after giving your ticket to the ticket taker before the strange events begin is unknown. Most players state that it's completely random and could take anywhere from the first playthrough to the 400th. The ensuing events though have deeply disturbed the players that experience them. The first occurrence takes place immediately once the player fades back in after walking into the hallway. This time they will notice that the ticket taker is absent. The player then, without any other options, can only walk into the dark hallway again. The sound clip and the text box mentioned previously still play in the absence of the ticket taker, but this time when the player walks into the hallway, their screen does not fade out. It will turn completely dark as they make their way deeper and deeper down the corridor, but the player's footsteps will be audible the whole time. Those claiming to have played the original game report to have felt extremely uncomfortable at this point, anticipating something horrible happening. Eventually the player is unable to continue forward. Nothing will happen for a few moments before a strange sprite that can only be described as the ticket taker but with a swirl for a face appears and stands before the player. The original players of the game say that upon seeing this sprite, which has been appropriately named the Swirly Head Man, their bodies immediately froze up and their stomachs churn. At first nothing will occur as the Swirly Headman stands before them, then without warning a piercing screech will play as the game begins to glitch out. This lasts for a few minutes, the screeching never ceasing. In time, the player is abruptly returned to the lobby, with all the sounds and graphics restored to how they should be. The game continues normally for the next couple of hallway cycles, though a couple of the original players claim that the Swirly Headman would briefly appear and disappear in the corner of their screens, accompanied by a brief yelp sound effect. At some point after meeting the Swirly Headman, the player will see the ticket taker pacing back and forth though there is no walking animation. The sprite's limbs are completely static, so he will just hop up and down slightly as a substitute, with his eyes wide and mouth open to simulate a worried facial expression. Some players noted that the movie posters had been replaced with images of the Swirly Headman, which caused them to immediately turn their character's head away and approach the ticket taker instead. After doing so, another different low-quality sound clip will play, but each box will contain nothing but corrupted characters that cause whatever text would have been in the box to become completely illegible. Due to the extremely low quality of the sound, it is debated by players what exactly the ticket taker says at this point, though it is widely agreed upon that he wants to never reach the other levels. Subsequently, the screen will fade out once again and return the players back to their starting point in the lobby. Again the ticket taker will be absent, and this time the hallway will be blocked by a large brick wall sprite. Touching the brick wall will immediately crash the game. No one knows what these other levels contain or how to access them. Nor is it known why the Swirly Headman causes such acute fear in those who have witnessed him. Sadly, we may never know, as all the original copies of the theater have either been lost or destroyed. But the creepiest part of all is the fact that every one of the original players of the game claim to occasionally see a brief glimpse of the Swirly Headman out of the corner of their eyes. Now, immediately I just want to say this is leagues better than the vast majority of gaming creepypastas from back in the day. The story tries to play it off more realistically than your average spooky haunted game. Instead, the game gives off the vibes of small forgotten company release before disappearing off the market, with the various glitches could be interpreted both as being caused by a rushed development and release process, or the meddling of a developer trying to scare the players. The only real paranormal stuff being at the end, with players sometimes seeing Mr. Swirly face here in the corner of their eyes. But if this was everything it had, then this creepypasta would have probably been forgotten by now, which is why it's time to talk about now, what really made this creepypasta special and gave it its cult following was the game that accompanied it. There isn't a lot known about this game because, as you will soon come to see, this game for a while became lost media, but for when it was active it gave the background footage necessary for creepypasta readings and provided with some classic early Markiplier screens. But out of seemingly nowhere the game disappeared off the internet. Links that used to redirect you to the download page went dead. And as far as I knew, that is how things were when I began writing this script. There was another fan game based on this creepypasta, but it's missing the very essence that made the old one unsettling, and it also cost money. Another recreation of this game was made by YouTuber Look for this extremely underrated video that I recommend checking it out. I was pretty bummed about this game being lost, but as I searched on Reddit of all places, I found an interesting thread with an interesting Google Drive link that immediately caught my attention. Now, I will not share the link because there is always a chance the game I played had a malware, despite it being perfectly fine on VirusTotal, but yeah, if I am to risk it, y'all won't have to. But anyways, as far as I know, this is going to be the first gameplay footage of the original theater game in years. The starting screen gives me quite a nostalgic feel, and just like in the creepypasta, selecting the options menu crashes the game. The game looks pretty much just like in the old Markiplier gameplay videos. It has this very low quality feel to it and dark ambience that makes it quite charming. And just like in the creepypasta, we are presented with this long lobby with posters that are complete gibberish. And at the end of the lobby have our sweet dear ticket taker that, just like in the creepypasta, says his iconic line.
Thank you. Please enjoy the movie.
If his voice sounds a little familiar, that's because his voice lines were taken from Mr. Creepypasta's reading on the theater itself, which is pretty neat. The ticket taker himself also has this low quality look. He pretty much looks like a picture of an actual ticket taker but compressed into this mess of pixels. His face is blurry as hell, so you can't make out any details, which I think is fantastic. The loop is pretty much the same as told in the creepypasta. You walk to the ticket taker, he says his line, you go into the dark hallway, repeat. He does change his position to always stare at you, which is pretty neat. Eventually he disappears, and with no other way to go, we venture inside the dark hallway, and we just keep on walking and walking until we can no longer walk, and this happens. Now, I have to say, this scare has not aged that well, mostly due to the delay in the audio when the swirly headman appears. But back in the day, this would have made me poop my pants, honestly. We returned to the normal hallway, and I was never happier than before to see the ticketman, so I decided to give him a lot of hugs for doing his job. Only for this to happen.
Enjoy the movie.
This corner screamer truly caught me off guard, as I did not remember this being a thing that could happen. So good job game from a decade ago, you got me. And you got me good. After walking through the hallway once again, we reached the swirly room, as now images of swirly head take the place of the posters. The ticket taker is walking the distance, and when we approach, he walks into the dark hallway telling us the iconic "Never reach the other levels." Ooh. Afterwards, we are sent to the last room of the game, the hallway now empty with a wall blocking our path that makes quite a strange noise. With no other option, we hit the wall and the game crashes. Overall, does this game still hold on after all these years? Hell yeah, while not being that scary except for that screamer that caught me completely off guard, the game does its job of capturing the magic of the original creepypasta quite well. The theater, in my opinion, is the best that the gaming creepypasta genre has to offer. Despite not being as remembered as Sonic.exe or Mario.exe or Last Silver, it still manages to capture a feeling that the rest do not. Realism in the sense that you could actually believe this was a real strange game sold back in the day that vanished from public consciousness. And I think it's good to take a look back and remember this classic. But not gonna lie, a remake of this would be pretty neat. Just don't do it like this one. This being said, I was your friendly, creepy, pasta eating robot, and I'll see you all next time.